I was 8 years old when my brother first tried to kill me. He didn't do it out of anger. He wasn't even mad. He did it because it made him laugh. I remember the weight of his body pinning me down, the way his hands pressed the pillow over my face just a little too long, just enough to make my vision blur and my chest burn. And when he finally let go, when I was coughing and sobbing, gasping for air like a fish thrown onto dry land, I looked up and saw her, my mother, standing in the doorway, watching, and she was smiling. Not the kind of smile you give a child who's just fallen off their bike. Not the kind you force when someone tells a bad joke. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this, who enjoyed it. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just my brother hurting me. This was a game they were playing together, and I was the toy. The beatings got worse. The suffocation turned into something regular, something he'd do just to see how long I could last before my body gave out. And every time, she was there. Sometimes she'd even clap. I tried to tell people. A teacher once asked about the bruises. I opened my mouth, and then I saw my mother standing behind her, eyes locked onto mine, fingers tapping against her thigh like she was counting down. I lied. That night, my brother broke 2 of my fingers. "You're learning," my mother said, stroking his hair like he'd done something good. I knew then that if I stayed, I would die in that house. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But one day, he'd press down just a little too hard, just a little too long, and that would be it. So I ran. But the thing about hell is, sometimes, it doesn't let you go that easy. Before I continue, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. For years, I believed I was the problem. That the bruises, the broken fingers, the way my lungs would scream for air, it was all my fault. That I must have been born wrong, made wrong, deserved wrong. But then I found the letters, tucked inside my mother's Bible, of all places. Pages so old they crumbled at the edges, written in a handwriting I didn't recognize. "He's getting stronger," one said. "But she still fights. We'll have to punish her harder." Signed with a name I'd never heard before. That's when I realized this wasn't just cruelty. It wasn't just a brother who liked to hurt and a mother who let him. It was a plan. And I was the only one who didn't know the rules. The night I ran, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong, because blood remembers, and secrets don't stay buried forever. What happened next? What I found out about my family, about why they really did what they did, would have killed a weaker person. My name is Rose, and I'm 68 years old, and I survived. And now, after 60 years of silence, I'm finally ready to tell the truth. The house always smelled like bleach and something sour underneath. From the outside, we looked like any other family on the block. My father went to work each morning in his clean pressed shirts. My mother made casseroles for church potlucks. My brother played quarterback. And me? I was the quiet one, the good girl. No one saw the way my brother's hands would twitch when he looked at me. No one heard the way my mother's voice got low and sweet right before she locked me in the closet for being difficult. The first real memory I have is my 7th birthday. My father gave me a porcelain doll with glass eyes that clicked when you tilted it. That night, my brother took it from my bed and smashed its face against the dresser until the eyes rolled across the floor. When I screamed, my mother came running, but not to help me. She grabbed my wrist so hard the bones ground together and hissed, "Stop your noise! He's just playing!" Then she made me kneel on the broken porcelain until my knees bled, to teach you about gratitude. That was the pattern. He would hurt me. She would make it worse. And my father? He'd look right through me at dinner like I was made of smoke. By the time I was 9, I knew the rules. 1. Never cry where the neighbors could hear. 2. Always say, "I fell," if teachers asked about bruises. 3. Most important, never, ever fight back. Because the one time I did, when I bit my brother's arm hard enough to draw blood, my mother held me down while he broke my pinky finger with a crack like a chicken bone. "Now we match," he whispered, showing me his own crooked finger from some long ago accident. Then he laughed, like it was the funniest joke in the world. That laugh still follows me into my dreams 60 years later. Not because it was cruel, but because it sounded exactly like our mother's. The slaps turned to punches. The punches turned to choking. And the choking turned into a game my brother liked to call night-night. He'd wait until I was almost asleep. Then his hands would be around my throat before I could scream. He'd count out loud as my vision tunneled. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Laughing when my legs kicked against the bedsheets. My mother would stand in the doorway with her arms crossed, egging him on. "She's still twitching," she'd say. "You're losing your touch." The first time I actually passed out, I woke up to them arguing. "You went too far this time," my mother snapped. Not out of concern, but annoyance, like he'd broken a toy she wasn't done playing with. My brother just shrugged. "She breathes too loud anyway." I learned to sleep with my back against the wall, to wake up if someone even stepped near my bed. But it didn't matter. The rules kept changing. One winter night when I was 10, my brother dragged me to the bathroom by my hair. The tiles were freezing against my bare feet. He pushed my face toward the filled tub, my mother leaning against the sink with that same small smile. "Hold your breath," he said. "Let's see if you float." The water was so cold it burned. I fought so hard I cracked my skull against the porcelain. When I came up choking, they were both laughing. My mother patted my soaking head like a dog. "Good girl, now do it again." That's when I understood. This wasn't just cruelty, it was practice. They were training me to disappear. The next morning at breakfast, my father buttered his toast and asked why my eyes were bloodshot. Before I could speak, my mother sighed. "Allergies." And that was that. I stared at my scrambled eggs, the yellow suddenly looking like the bubbles that had escaped my nose underwater. A question settled in my bones that never left. How much longer before they decide not to let me come back up? The night everything changed, like all the others. The creak of my bedroom door, the weight on my mattress, my brother's hands around my throat before I could fully wake. But this time was different. His grip was tighter. His thumbs pressed deeper. I scratched at his arms until I drew blood, but he didn't flinch. My vision went black at the edges, then completely. I don't know how long I was out. Seconds? Minutes? When I came to, I was on the floor, my lungs burning like I'd swallowed fire. My mother's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. "Her lips are blue. Let's see if she makes it through the night." Not worried, curious. My brother wiped his hands on his pajama pants like he'd just finished eating. "If she dies, can I have her radio?" That's when the last thread inside me snapped. As they walked out, leaving me gasping on the cold hardwood, I made my first real decision in 11 years of life. I would not die in this house. That night, while they slept, I stole 3 things. 1. My father's pocket knife from his dresser. 2. The $17 my mother kept in her coffee can. 3. My birth certificate, proof I'd existed at all. The screen door screeched when I slipped out at 3 a.m. I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at the neighborhood, not at the life that had tried to erase me. The cold air hurt my bruised throat, but I kept running. 1 block, then 2, then 12, until my legs gave out behind a gas station dumpster. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because families like mine, they don't let go that easily. And the truth about why they wanted me gone? That would haunt me long after the bruises faded. The first time I tried to get help was in 4th grade. Mrs. Wilkins noticed the fingerprint bruises around my wrists during morning attendance. When she asked what happened, the words tumbled out before I could stop them. My brother does it when we play. Her face changed. That afternoon, she made me wait in the principal's office while they called my mother. I'll never forget the way my mother's perfume filled the small room when she arrived. Her hand clamped down on my shoulder, nails digging in just for me to feel. "We're so sorry," she told them with tears in her eyes. "Our son has emotional problems. We're getting him help." The ride home was silent. That night, my brother sat on my bed smiling while my mother held my left hand flat against the nightstand. "Which finger did you use to point at us?" she asked. The sound of the hammer coming down was louder than my scream. After that, I learned. Teachers see, but don't see. Neighbors hear, but don't hear. Police nod, but don't help. When I was 12, I ran to the grocery store manager after my brother left me locked in the trunk for hours. The manager called the cops. The cops called my parents. My father paid them off with a handshake and a bottle of whiskey from his special cabinet. That punishment lasted 3 days in the basement with no food. Just a bucket and my brother's voice through the vents. "You're not special enough for anyone to care." Every person who failed me taught the same lesson. 1. Trust equals pain. 2. Hope equals weakness. 3. Survival meant keeping my mouth shut until the night I realized survival wasn't enough anymore. Because they weren't trying to break me. They were trying to erase me. The night that changed everything began with a sound. The sharp crack of my head hitting the kitchen counter. My brother had been in a mood all day. I knew the signs, the way his fingers twitched, the way he kept cracking his knuckles. I'd been careful, too careful. That was my mistake. He cornered me while I was washing dishes. "You're breathing too loud again," he said. Then his hands were around my throat, slamming me backward. The impact was so hard the world went white. When my vision cleared, blood was dripping down my neck, pooling on the linoleum. For the first time ever, my brother looked scared. Not for me, for himself. My mother rushed in, her face pale. She grabbed a dish rag and pressed it to my head, but her hands were shaking. Not from worry, from fear. "She'll need stitches," she hissed at my brother. How do we explain this? That's when I realized they weren't afraid of me dying. They were afraid of getting caught. The hospital was out of the question. Instead, my mother dragged me to the bathroom, poured rubbing alcohol over the wound, and stitched it herself with a needle and thread. No painkillers, no comfort. Just her cold hands yanking the thread tight with every pull. "Don't you dare cry," she warned. "You brought this on yourself." That night, as I lay on my bedroom floor, too dizzy to stand, I heard them arguing downstairs. "We have to be more careful," my mother snapped. "If someone sees—" My brother's reply was low, angry. "Then maybe we should make sure she can't talk at all." A silence followed, not a denial, a consideration. That's when I knew I wouldn't survive another lesson. The bloodstains never fully came out of that dish rag. My mother kept it folded in the laundry room, a reminder. For her, a warning to be more careful. For me, a sign it was time to disappear. I waited until the house was asleep, until the only sounds were my father's snoring and the old refrigerator humming in the kitchen. My head still throbbed from the stitches, my vision swimming if I moved too fast. But I didn't have time to be dizzy. This was my only chance. I took nothing but one. The birth certificate I'd stolen months ago. 2. A plastic bag of dry cereal from the pantry. 3. The paring knife I'd been sharpening against my bedroom floorboards for weeks. The back door creaked when I opened it. I froze, listening for any sign they'd heard. Nothing. The night air hit my face like a slap, the ground freezing under my bare feet. I didn't care. I ran. I made it 3 blocks before I heard the screen door slam behind me. Then his voice cut through the dark. "I see you, little bitch!" Footsteps pounding the pavement, getting closer. My brother was faster, always had been. I ducked behind Mrs. Henderson's hedge just as his hand grabbed at my nightgown. The fabric ripped as I twisted away. He lunged again. This time, I swung the paring knife. The blade caught his forearm. He howled, more surprised than hurt. "You're dead!" he spat, clutching the cut. "When I drag you back—" I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, past the elementary school, through the alley behind the laundromat, my bare feet slapping against cold concrete. Blood from my stitches dripped down my neck, mixing with sweat. The train tracks. That was my only thought. If I could make it to the freight yard, I could hide between the cars. Maybe stow away, maybe die trying. Either was better than going back. I didn't hear the car until it was almost on me. Headlights blinded me as it screeched to a stop. The passenger door flew open. "Get in!" a voice shouted. For one stupid second, I thought it was helpful. Then I recognized the shape of my father's work van. My brother leaned across the front seat, his bleeding arm leaving smears on the steering wheel. "Dad's gonna love hearing how you cut me," he said, smiling like Christmas came early. I turned to run again, just as my mother stepped out from behind a telephone pole. She must have driven the other car, cut me off. Her hair was perfectly curled, like she'd taken time to fix it before coming to hunt me down. "Enough of this nonsense," she said, reaching for me. That's when I saw what was in her other hand, the stained dish rag from earlier. Soaked in something now, smelling sharp and chemical. "You're coming home." I swung the knife again. This time, I didn't miss. The blade went deep into her reaching hand. She screamed, a real scream, not the performative kind she used for doctors and teachers. The sound shocked us both. That moment of surprise saved my life. I ducked under her arms and bolted toward the train bridge, heard my brother shout, heard the van door slam. Then, a sound I'll never forget, my mother's voice, calm and clear as a bell. "Let her go. She won't last the night." The freight yard was deserted at 3 a.m. I crawled between 2 boxcars, my body shaking so hard I could barely breathe. The knife was still in my hand, sticky with my brother's and mother's blood. I watched the horizon for headlights, listened for footsteps. None came. When the train whistle blew at dawn, I didn't hesitate. I climbed the rusty ladder between cars as the engine groaned to life. The metal was so cold, it burned my hands. I didn't care. As the train pulled away, I watched my town disappear through the slats of the boxcar. The church steeple, the water tower, the house where I'd almost died 100 times. I thought that was the end. It wasn't, because 3 days later, when I stumbled into a homeless shelter 3 states away, the worker taking my information gasped at my birth certificate. "This can't be right," she said, turning the paper over. "According to this, you died in 1968. And that's when I saw it, the small, official stamp in the corner I'd never noticed before. Deceased. The shelter worker's hands trembled as she held my birth certificate under the flickering fluorescent light. "Honey," she said quietly, "this says you died in a house fire when you were 3 years old." I laughed. It came out cracked and wrong. "That's impossible. I'm right here." But the proof was stamped in faded government ink. A death certificate attached to my birth records. My name, my birthday, even my parents' names, all correct. The worker made a call. I sat on a stained plastic chair, watching her face grow pale as she spoke in hushed tones. When she hung up, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "You need to leave," she said. "Now." I spent that night under a highway overpass, clutching my knife, staring at the papers that said I was a ghost. The truth came together in pieces. The locked closet they'd put me in for hours. The way no teachers ever kept my records. The time a librarian gasped when I gave my last name. My father's words when he thought I couldn't hear. We should have left her in the ashes. They'd done more than hurt me. They'd buried me. For years after, I moved like a shadow, sleeping in bus stations, stealing food when I had to, always watching for my brother's face in crowds. The world outside my family's house wasn't kind to a girl who didn't legally exist. I learned to disappear in new ways. How to forge work papers, how to bandage my own wounds, how to smile when men asked questions I couldn't answer. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was realizing my mother had been right all along. No one was looking for me. Because as far as the world knew, I'd stopped existing years before I ever ran away. Sometimes at night, I'd press my fingers to the scar on my scalp where she'd stitched me up. The only proof I was real. Then one rainy afternoon in 1978, I saw my father's obituary in a discarded newspaper, and tucked in the last paragraph, a sentence that made my hands shake. He is survived by his wife Margaret, son Thomas, and daughter Elizabeth. Elizabeth, a sister I never had. That's when I understood. They hadn't just erased me. They'd replaced me, and I was going to find out why. The nursing home smelled like antiseptic and boiled vegetables. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, watching the withered woman in the bed who used to terrify me. Time had shrunk her to bones and papery skin, her once perfect hair now thin and yellowed against the pillow. She didn't recognize me at first. "Margaret," I said, "not Mom, never again." Her eyes focused slowly. Then her mouth twisted into something almost like a smile. "Took you long enough." The monitors beeped between us as I pulled up a chair. I didn't touch her, just laid my birth certificate on the blanket between us, that damning deceased stamp facing up. "You owe me the truth." She coughed, a wet sound that might have been a laugh. "You always were dramatic." The story came out in broken pieces between her labored breaths. The real fire happened when I was 3. Electrical fault in the nursery. My parents collected the insurance money on their dead daughter, then kept me hidden as their private punching bag. The perfect crime. No birth certificate needed for a ghost. Elizabeth was born 2 years after my death. Their fresh start. Their clean slate. "But she died too," my mother said matter-of-factly. "Car accident at 16 served her right for being so careless." I stared at this woman who turned motherhood into a horror story. "Why keep me at all?" Her fingers plucked at the blanket. "Thomas needed someone to practice on." The heart monitor spiked as I stood up. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "You were always weak," she spat. "Running away, surviving, should have died that night in the fire like you were supposed to." I peeled her fingers off one by one. "But I didn't." The last sound I heard as I walked out was her screaming for the nurses. Not in pain, in rage. Some things never change. I stood outside in the parking lot, breathing in the cold air. For the first time in 50 years, the past felt finished. Then my phone rang. An unknown number, and a voice I hadn't heard in decades. "Hello, sister." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the pavement. That voice? Older now, rougher, but unmistakable. Thomas. I should have run. Hung up, changed my name again. But something in me snapped. "You're calling from prison," I said. It wasn't a question. I'd tracked his arrest records years ago. Aggravated assault, 10 to 15 years. His chuckle crackled through the line. "Good behavior gets you phone privileges." A pause. "Mom's dead?" I looked back at the nursing home, the window of her room now dark. "How did you—" "The nurses called me first." His voice dropped. "She left you something." 2 days later, a battered shoebox arrived at my apartment. Inside, bundled in yellowed newspaper. 1. A lock of baby hair tied with pink ribbon. Elizabeth's, not mine. 2. My father's old pocket watch. 3. A stack of letters addressed to Thomas at Sing Sing prison. The last one was dated 3 weeks before my mother died. Her shaky handwriting slanted across the page. "If she comes asking questions, tell her about the basement, about what we buried after the fire. The insurance money was good, but the life insurance policy on Elizabeth paid even better. We all played our parts, even you." My hands shook as I dug deeper. Underneath the letters lay a faded photograph I'd never seen before. A family portrait. Mother, father, Thomas, and between them, a little girl with curly hair. Not me, Elizabeth, alive, smiling at the camera in the same pink dress I'd been forced to wear on special occasions. The date stamp, 1976. 9 years after she was supposedly dead. The room spun as I pieced together their final con. They hadn't just faked my death, they'd faked hers too, and somewhere out there, my replacement was still breathing. The phone rang again. Thomas's number? This time, I answered. "Did you find it yet?" he asked. "The key taped under the watch?" I turned the timepiece over. A small silver key glinted in the light. "Come home, sister," Thomas whispered. "We have so much to talk about." And for the first time in my life, I said yes. The key fit the lock of my childhood home's basement door, the one place I'd never been allowed to go. The air smelled of damp earth and something metallic as I descended the steps, my flashlight cutting through decades of dust. What I found changed everything. A small desk, a stack of insurance policies, and a single, carefully preserved newspaper clipping from 1967. Local family perishes in tragic fire. Only son survives. The photo showed our house in flames. The article listed 4 victims: my parents, me, and a baby sister named Elizabeth who never existed. Thomas stood in the corner watching me piece it together. "They collected on all of us," he said quietly, over and over. The truth was worse than I imagined. 1. The fire had been set deliberately. 2. I was never supposed to survive it. 3. Elizabeth was another fake identity, another payout waiting to happen. My hands trembled as I turned to face my brother, the monster of my childhood. His eyes were different now, hollow, haunted. "I was 8 when Dad first put my hands around your neck," he said. "They made me practice on stray cats first." The realization hit like a physical blow. Thomas hadn't been my tormentor. He'd been my fellow prisoner. In that moment, 60 years of hate crumbled. We weren't a family. We were casualties of the same con, the same sickness that turned children into paychecks. I reached for my brother's hand, the one with the crooked pinky he'd given himself to match mine all those years ago. Together, we burned that house to the ground. To anyone who's ever been hurt by the people who were supposed to love you, your pain is real, your story matters, and no piece of paper, no stamp, no lie, no fake death certificate can ever erase your right to exist. I survived. You can too. If this story carved itself into your bones, if you've ever been the girl no one believed, the boy they tried to erase, do something for me. Type "We survive" in those comments below. Let me see your voice. Let me bear witness. And if you need to hear this today, that house doesn't get to keep you. Those lies don't get to name you. Whatever they stamped on your life, worthless, forgotten, gone, you rewrite it in your own hand. Subscribe to this channel, not just for me, for the others still finding their way out of the dark. Your story could be the match that lights their path home.